views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect the views of BronxNet or the program underwriters.
So, as usual and as always, I thank everyone for coming today. We'll do introductions. I am Deputy Borough President Marita Scott McFadden.
Hi everybody, good morning, my name is
Good morning, my name is Israel Gonzalez from Councilman Mark Jonai's office.
Good morning, my name is James Garcia from Councilman Vanessa.
Good morning, my name is Shannon Knox from Councilman Sacramento's office.
Good morning, I'm Bill Hall, Chair Board 12.
George Torres, Community Board 12.
LaShawna Dodson, Community Coordinator from Community Board 5.
Tracy Gutierrez, responsible for President's office.
Marisol Halpern, Director of Borough Operations for the Borough President.
And the audience over here, please.
Henriette, Director of Community Sanitation. Christopher Klingler, Chief of Enforcement and Safety.
Rick Sachs.
Steve Nicole, Roscoe Chief of Sanitation. Keith Cowan, Deputy Inspector.
Maria Matos, Partnership Specialist from the U.S. Census Bureau.
Anyone else over there? Yeah.
Keith.
Yes, young lady? Thank you. Good morning again. Good morning, Ms. Acevedo. Would you like to introduce yourself?
I'm so sorry, I apologize, I was just on the phone. Good morning, everyone, Ralph Acevedo, Bronx Community Board 2.
That's how you get noticed. A hearty good morning. Okay, without coffee. Okay, so pursuant to Chapter 4, Section 85, and Chapter 69, Section 2706 of the New York City Charter, a joint meeting of the Bronx Borough Service Cabinet and Bronx Borough Board will take place here today, Thursday, April 25th, 2019, beginning at 9:15 and room 819 of 851 Grand Concourse. And we're very excited to have with us today a presentation from Sanitation, and you always know it's going to be a good day when all of the guys from Sanitation come out to visit with us here in the Bronx. So can we have our presenters, Christopher Klinger and Henry Earhart? I hope I'm saying the names correctly. If not, correct me later. And Stephen Coley for the presentation. Yep. No? Okay. Come on down. Oh, the census is up. Oh, you can use the podium.
Okay, hello everybody. Henriette, Director of Community Affairs for New York City Sanitation. Great to be here. Real quick, everybody knows and should have gotten information, and hopefully we've gotten it out to our communities that the Bronx Safe event is coming up. And we would encourage everybody who has those kinds of, potentially harmful chemical products to come out to the event and bring them. You can also bring your electronic goods and some other things. So we want to see people out there and getting that material to where it needs to go appropriately. As you probably know, and as probably have heard of discussions going on over the last few years, one of the major changes that we've made in how we do our operations is how we do snow operations. We changed a few years ago from primary, secondary, and tertiary streets and how we address them, to critical streets and sector streets. Critical streets are basically highways and main streets, streets with firehouses, streets with police stations, streets with hospitals, and virtually everybody else is on a sector street except the very small streets which are on our Holster routes. And as we've been discussing at the annual budget consultation meetings over the last few years, we have purchased a major amount of smaller equipment to address the smaller streets. We also, this past year, began doing more pre-treating of areas in advance of snowstorms where it tends to freeze. Something that we hadn't done an extensive amount of before, but something that we added this year. We've also been using some brine trucks and some other things to address snow. Now, the unusual part, as we all know, of this last year's snow season is we had well over a dozen snow events or snow alerts that we get that we send out from our office. Most all of the forecasts overestimated what we were going to get, except the storm back in November, which grossly underestimated what we were about to get and had a very bad problem in terms of timing. We did make a number of adjustments post that. The most important thing, though, is we need access to the roads. So we tried to message earlier on in terms of encouraging people to leave vehicles home and take mass transit. Because the worst thing that can happen is that cars are on the road clogging things up, nobody can move, including snow plows and spreaders, and then we can't address the conditions so we can actually get traffic moving. So, those are some of the things that we made changes. Chief Piccolo can go into more details, and your district superintendents can go over with you the specifics in your particular districts. The other thing is we have had and continue to have a focus on illegal dumping. In general, it's less of a problem in the city than it was, say, 10 or 20 years ago. It hasn't totally gone away, as you well know, but it's an issue that we are constantly focusing on. We continue to have the illegal dumping reward program for individuals who see dumping in progress, and the fines for that went up substantially over the last year. So the potential for receiving 50% of the award went up substantially over the last year. We haven't had many in recent years. People file for that, as we have in the past, because in general, as I said, dumping tends to be down, which is a good thing, but we know it still goes on. So when there are areas that there are problems, you should get them to Chief Klinger's office, and he'll focus attention on that. Overall, the other problem that we know that the Bronx is concerned about are people cleaning up after their pets. And we've tried a number of initiatives to remind people that they should be picking up after their pet. We obviously, as a last resort, have to use enforcement. That is challenging because the enforcement officers have to actually see it happening. And usually if people spot some of the personnel, they suddenly become good pet caretakers and pick up after their pet. So we know that happens too, but we know that in your various areas where there are areas of concern that you would like us to focus on, let us know, and we will address those kinds of conditions. I'll let Chief Klinger and Chief Piccolo fill you in on some of the other things that are going on in the borough and enforcement-wise. And then obviously we're available to take questions, answers, and any other information you'd like to give us. Everybody has in their packet a variety of information, by the way, that we put together based on what we understood your concerns were. You have the scorecard information by fiscal year. you have the scorecard information for this last year, month by month. That is available on the Mayor's Office of Operations website. We have summonses in terms of illegal dumping and canine waste and a number of other categories, as well as the service requests and complaints by those key categories that we receive via 311. Most all of that data is available on the city's open data site. If you're not sure where that is, we can provide some directions for that. We also have a variety of materials on our website that you can order. We encourage you to do that. And if you don't see it, just give our office a call. Let us know and we'll get it to you.
Good morning.
Okay. Thank you for inviting us today at Sanitation. I'd like to talk a little bit about the litter baskets, all right, the DSNY baskets, and how we generally our department guidelines for placement, and the reason maybe or maybe not that we would remove them off the street. But the basic placement of the litter baskets for commercial corridors, pedestrian traffic, pedestrian traffic areas, transportation hubs, shopping areas. Those are the general areas that the department will place out the baskets and place them in the corner. All right. Also, that goes into that is a feasible DSNY service. Obviously, we cannot service baskets when we place them on every corner in residential areas. So we stick to our guidelines of where we put them. Misuse is a major part for removing the basket. We have had identified baskets that constantly get misused, and it's over a period of time. It's not just like that one misuse or whatever. People use it for their household garbage, commercial waste, or dump outs, and they constantly use these baskets for their misuse. So we identify, we have our district offices out there, and they identify, they take pictures, they bring it up, and they document it, and they bring it to us. And it's over, like I said, a period of time, of months, and that's when we realize, okay, the letter comes to us, and then at the borough, and then we filter it down to our cleaning office downtown, and whether or not we're going to remove the basket. And and many times in instances where there is misuse, the removal of the basket, the corner becomes much cleaner. There's less litter, there's less dump outs, so the corner becomes much cleaner, and therefore it works. So we also document and we monitor post-removal, see how that corner is, take pictures and document it on there. So just to see before and after. So I just wanted to touch base with that and go over you so you guys know. And most of my district supers, they should have been in your meetings this month going over with you as well at your borough, at your district meetings. All right. Another thing I would like to discuss also is the Leventhal areas. Now, the Leventhal areas is an agreement for the city agencies, DOT, Parks, Sanitation, and the other city agencies cleaning up the areas. Most of the areas unlandscaped. Unlandscaped falls under our domain for sanitation, except for areas that are abutting or next to highways and coming off the ramps of highways. Obviously, that would be DOT. But these areas, for the most part, are under us. But the landscape areas would be fall under parks, because as our commissioner comes to many of our meetings, if we kill things, when it comes down to cleaning, we kill them. So if it's trees or whatever the case may be, we're not there to cultivate and make the weed. Usually just get rid of it and kill the weeds or whatever it is. So that's our job. All right. So there is an ongoing thing that we have constant communication with both parks, DOT, and the other city agencies, and decipher whose responsibility is certain things. And a lot of times, you know, sanitation, we jump in and we'll just do it because we have the manpower available. And we'll just get on it. Chief of Cleaning, Chief Visconti, more often than not, just says just go ahead in certain areas specifically, especially when Marisol is a ball or whatever. we jump in and we will do it, even though it is someone else's responsibility. Scorecard. I'd like to touch base on the scorecard a little bit, on how we utilize that as our metric, that for cleaning resources. Overall, our scorecard is doing very well this year. We use a 90% barometer of clean streets, 90%, and we're just, every district is over that 90% except for one that's only 0.4 of a point, 1 point underneath that 90 barometer. In that district, I have no doubt, which is Bronx 3, will be over it by the end of the fiscal year. No doubt that. So we're doing well with the scorecard. All right, it's an independent agency that does rate the streets, and they rate it, they're supposed to rate it 2 times a month, but usually once a month. Snow removal we talked about. The storm of November 15th was a challenging storm for everybody. From my view, it was a very challenging storm. We were out there, if you looked at the whole borough, we have GPS, and I monitor everything that goes on within the borough, so I monitored where we are in comparison to the other boroughs, and we were 20% ahead of any borough before the real storm came in, and we were 20% above the salt waters. We were almost salted every street before the snow started sticking, so we were in real good shape when that came down to. But again, the weather changed, traffic was a problem, and we don't know the after that. But with that, the department is getting brine trucks because of that storm. It's another layer of protection. The brine trucks will be put out, we're going to be allocated for 2 trucks, all right, for the borough, and they'll be put to spread sodium chloride. And that will go down, and that can stay 24 hours before storm. So we'll be pre-treating with sodium chloride, especially our bus routes, the hill bus routes in those areas, challenging locations. So we're going to be doing that this year, and then we're allocated to get a couple of more bigger trucks, probably for more of a highway use at the end of the year. All right, so with that, the brine, I think, will definitely help us. Will definitely help us for pre-treating the storm. Enforcement, I know that Marisol always calls me up on enforcement and illegal dumping. Although maybe down citywide, we do have our problems here in the Bronx. And I prioritize locations that I see that, constantly get it, and we have a list that I'm in contact with Chief Klingler, and we have a list that we go back and forth, that we monitor, and he uses his sanitation police to monitor. And we've been pretty successful.
You're actually, compared to last year, you're up 13 legal dumping in pounds for the Borough of Bronx. And we still got two more months to go in the fiscal year. Everybody hear that?
Yeah.
All right, so we're up 13. Summonses for illegal dumping, we're up 30 from compared to last year. So big concentration up in, I want to say Bronx 2 and Bronx 12 is our major locations with the illegal dumping that we produce a lot of impounds out of there. So.
Yeah, so the illegal dumping we've been on top of, again, constantly, we got the same locations over and over. Just go down Webster Avenue, open, like, Bronx 12, Borough, what's that mean? It's usually on the outskirts. I mean, it happens everywhere, but outside of Bronx too, we have it, the industrial side constantly. Those are the 2 who probably get the most in the borough, but it happens everywhere. And obviously, we would like to prefer to deter and to have it at 0, but we're working on that.
Can I just hit on something? I don't know if you know, but recently they just changed the law. The fines have changed for illegal dumping. They used to be 20,000 max. When they went to court, it was 50. The judge, first time offense, got 1,500. Right now, the law is 4,000 for the first, 9,000 for the second, and 18,000 for the third if they're caught with the same ID, of course, or the same owner of the vehicle. And just to let you know, if the owner is not present while the vehicle is being impounded, he's still responsible. So the operator of the vehicle, and he participates in the vehicle, and the owner is responsible, and they all get the same summons. Different summons code, but the same fine. So that's good. Also, law has changed with mail being found and improper disposal inside a bag that might be in a location that's not a collection location inside a DSNY basket. So if we go to a location with overflowing baskets and we open up a bag and we can have some identifying mail in there, we could now issue a summons for that. So that's helping. We also concentrating on quality of life. Summonses have changed from littering from a vehicle, urinating in public. So if you need any of that information, you can reach out to my office. I'll be glad to supply you with any of that. All right? We supplied you with some summons history for the last year or so for every Bronx district.
So just to talk a little bit about cleaning and add to what the chief said, one of the great things, and we've been very appreciative of it, is that the community boards have been big supporters of extra funds for cleaning, particularly MLPs, litter baskets, as well as your council members. The council some years ago established a New York City Cleanup Initiative where designated funds for each council member to provide for additional cleaning services in their district. Could be to the sanitation department for extra litter basket collection, extra mechanical broom service, extra MLP service, or to a nonprofit. Most all of your council members are doing, one or some of the above, which has brought extra litter basket service to your district. There was supplemental monies put in last year for additional litter basket service, particularly in those areas that didn't have 7-day-a-week litter basket services. So that affected a lot of the boroughs outside of Manhattan. The reality is that, we're told we're coming into a very difficult, very challenging budget year. The executive budget, as you all know, will be coming out in a few weeks. We don't know where it's going or, what the potentials are. That's something we're all going to be watching for. I'm sure your council members will, and as well as the community boards here in the Bronx. It will be, as usual, a process of discussion between the council and the administration and the realities of what funds are available and what priorities the city has to address before we see what comes out in June when the budget is adopted and what that actually means on the street. So you know the process. It's beginning. The council will be holding hearings later in May. As I said, we don't know exactly what the impacts are going to be, but we are told that it's going to be a tight budget year. The other thing is, on litter baskets, as you know, on the commercials, there's basket routes that run mostly on the night shift down the commercial streets to provide extra litter basket service. Just propping a litter basket up in a residential area means it's going to get the service that the residents get, 2 or 3 times a week, and that's going to be it. That often leads to the fact that the litter basket, rather than collecting pedestrian litter, by and large winds up collecting household waste, which, you could put a dozen litter baskets there and it's not going to handle the household waste that people want to drop off into it. So sometimes locating a litter basket is not necessarily going to help a situation. Sometimes it creates its own eyesore and its own problem. So it's not so much the litter basket, it's the ability to service it and the ability to see that it's used properly, which is for pedestrian litter and not for household or commercial waste, because that just creates a problem for you, your communities, your constituents, and for us when people complain that it's overflowing, and what we, 9 times out of 10 find out that it's overflowing because there are bags of commercial or household waste in it, and we don't want to see that, out on the street. generally, if you look around other cities, New York tends to have more litter baskets per person, per street, per whatever than most other cities in the nation. We try to make it rational in terms of putting it on the major commercial streets where there are large transportation facilities and things like that, where people are actually going to use it to dispose of pedestrian litter and things that we don't want to see dropped on the streets. So,
Just touch base with the supplemental basket service and the funds that were given to. We have every district has a taste of it, and it's from our standpoint, my standpoint, that the borough works tremendously. We give. That means every basket in the commercial strip at least has an extra service. Okay, we give the service on as overtime. Okay, to the sanitation workers, so they do service after the 2 o'clock shift. So it works, and because we know that what we empty at 8 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 3 o'clock in the morning often gets filled up by 12. So that additional service goes a long way. And I would ask that when dealing with your council members to request that maybe, because we do have the trucks, we do have the personnel that can just empty it right from there instead of giving it to somewhere else where maybe they got to bag it up. So with that, it's been working, and obviously, you can see in your neighborhood that baskets tend to be not overflowing as much. So that's very important. I want to thank, before I can now take some of your questions, I want to thank all the community board managers for having a good rapport with my superintendents. That's very important. I use that, and we have it as well as with the borough president. The feedback that we get makes our service that much better, so we know where to go in the right direction. And that's very important, and I like that open line of communication, especially from my standpoint, and with the borough president's office too. So we can not only know what we're doing, we may be doing something wrong, or something that needs additional service, or something that you see. So it's very important. So I think we guys questions? Yeah.
Ralph?
Just want to say a few things, and then I have a question for sanitation. The levy board, they touched on that, and I think that's something maybe the city council and the borough president should revisit. It's a very old document, and a perfect example is if we leave it, and I love sanitation, they do excellent work in my district, but if we leave it up to them, they're going to just cut all of the beautification that parks have done down, determining who's the property owner, and the end result, we got to get it cleaned up. I experienced that with my mediums on Hunts Point Avenue. I mean, they just overgrew, and it was a back and forth of who's responsible for the maintaining of it, and they just ended up cutting everything down. We got to replant everything now. But I think if we can determine who the property owner, who's responsible for cleaning what, that would be great. One thing I know that George and I learned a lot from George, and this year we were thankful we only had that one storm, but there are times when alternate side parking is suspended because of street snow removal, snow cleaning, and in some districts it is impossible to clean the street if you don't have alternate side parking. The cars don't move and the snow just builds up, and then all of this trash just combines. By the time alternate side is enforced, there's nothing but snow and garbage everywhere. New York City, the snow looks beautiful just an hour after it comes down. After that, it's New York City snow. My question now is regarding this book here, this commercial waste zone. Is this a citywide book? Is this or just the borough?
It's citywide.
So in this, it's beautifully illustrated, but you single out my district in this book on page 13, and I want to know, and it's about routing of trucks and private cartering, and you illustrate that it's 34 trucks, and they go basically throughout the city. I want to know, what are you doing now to correct that? If you're pointing it out,
Right.
hopefully you got a plan of action. I
Right.
just wanna know
So
what it is.
let me get to that last, but let's touch on the Leventhal directive first, which dates back from 1983. So to say that it's a little dated is, an accurate statement. And as the chief said, we deal with unlandscaped areas. Unlandscaped areas being defined as medians where there are occasional trees. I think what we all know, though, is that over the years, the occasional trees, many more trees have been planted in the median than the quote-unquote occasional trees. And as our commissioner has said, we're not a horticultural agency. Okay, we're not the guys who are experts at taking care of horticulture and trees. So where we're responsible for cleaning the median, we're really not responsible for taking care of the trees in the median. That still actually rests, if you look at city law with the Parks Department. The reality is, though, the only thing that we can do is kill the weeds and clear them out on the medians. Okay, the other factor with the Leventhal memorandum, agreement, directive, whatever you want to phrase it as, is that since 1983, there's been a whole range of new infrastructure created in the city that isn't mentioned at all in the agreement. Now, that sort of defaults in a certain way. The problem is that that doesn't necessarily mean that you got extra funding to address those unique new pieces of infrastructure, some of which really aren't defined in that agreement, at all. We now have, various things that have done, all good things, to improve transportation in the city, but they're really not mentioned or envisioned in the Leventhal agreement. And the other problem and challenge we have is that the city does not have enforcement jurisdiction over higher levels of government. So if you're a state agency or something like that, you should be cleaning a certain area, but the city does not have enforcement power to induce them to clean that area. So, that's a challenge too. We understand all of those things. We do what we can within available resources, but, there's a lot of things that have developed in the city since that was put in place back in '83. With regard to the commercial waste zones, they picked certain sample districts just to show what was going on in those districts as an example. So it wasn't to highlight any particular district for any other reason than to find a sample of like a district in Manhattan as opposed to a district in Brooklyn or the Bronx or Queens. Right now we're finishing the review that occurred by the 2 public hearings that happened a while ago, and then the subsequent time period that people had to make written statements. Shortly there'll be a final report issued, and then there will be discussions with the council over legislation to implement the recommendations of the plan. So that discussion is going to start to begin in the next several months and over probably the next council session. Where it goes, depends upon the discussions between the administration and the council, and I'm sure the council will hold its own, hearings and process as it goes through that. So, that's the challenge. The other challenge with snow, garbage, and alternate side cleaning is that it takes, and the chief can speak to this in much more accurate detail than I can, but it will take 8 to 12 hours if we have a storm that predicts, say, 4, 5, or 6 inches, for him to put the fleet and get the plows on or off. Okay? It also means that the same people that are clearing the snow have to pick up the garbage. And they tended to not reintroduce alternate side parking unless the temperatures were such where they believed that we could start knocking down the snow and that it would melt a little bit to clear up the parking lanes and things like that. So that's why that sometimes is a little bit lagging behind. But it's also why collection gets suspended a little bit earlier now than it may have in the past, because in order to plow up the fleet, it takes time to do that, 8 to 12 hours, which means you can't collect while you're doing that, and while you're taking the plows off, obviously you can't collect. So there are some delays. Normally what we say is that people should put it out based on their schedule, keep it clear, so that when, we do resume, we're able to see it and get to it quickly. Very rarely do we tell people not to put it out by their schedule and keep it in. That will happen if, if you remember, we had that 30-plus inch storm some years ago. In that particular storm, we did tell people, hold it until we're ready to tell you. Most all the other storms we have in the city, we just tell people, follow their regular schedule. Collection is suspended right now, and we will resume it as soon as possible. And then generally we work overtime and sometimes even Sundays and holidays to catch up with what's out there. Alternate side parking, generally DOT is waiting till we get some temperatures that will enable us to actually knock the snow down a little bit, and where it will melt when we do that, so we can start clearing the parking lanes. Because they know people are parked in and they don't necessarily have an alternative if they tell them to get out there. So it's a balance. It's not always perfect, but that's the intent behind it.
I honestly think you do a great job. I'm just trying to bring some examples of where I think other city agencies and legislation can assist you with this. I can go on forever talking about it, because I have tons of illegal dumping, but they are phenomenal, they're accessible, and I have a great relationship with my garage, so thank you.
So, thank you. I guess I would be remiss if I didn't say that what you spoke about, having a relationship with the district superintendent, is very key, and you guys have been very helpful to Community Board 12. Currently, we're working on a project with Metro North Railroad where we're cleaning up all the illegal dumping along Bullard Avenue, and you guys have been super, not only in removing some of the trash that they took away or were able to dump out onto the street, but also being helpful maintaining it clean, because they're currently putting in a 10-foot fence. They'll also be putting in a guardrail. So I do want to thank you for that. And my criticism now is not directed at the general workers or anybody really at DSNY. I know that this happens above your pay grade, and this is really for the city council. I've been a district manager since 2015, August 2015. I've been in the game for a very long time. A lot of people around this table, especially the district managers, all brand new. I'm the third or fourth longest serving district manager in the Bronx right now, after community boards 1, 3, and 9. So everybody, well, not everybody's here, but everybody who's a district manager has less service than me. But again, they've been in the game for quite some time. The point that I'm making there is we are revisiting issues that have been issues for 5 million years. I'm exaggerating, but I'm doing that for emphasis. And the point that I'm making to the city council is it really shouldn't be that way. If you can't solve this problem, then we need to find people who can. Because it's ridiculous that Community Board 2 and Community Board 12 have constant problems of illegal dumping along Webster Avenue and along the industrial areas of Hunts Point. I mean, this is a broken record now. And the point that I'm making on this is that every year we do district budget consultations, and we sit down with the Department of Sanitation, we sit down with DOT, we sit down with DOH, and we go through the budget and we make requests for additional services, additional MPL, my responses from your agency, whoever's responsible for those responses tells me as a district manager, oh, not our responsibility, speak to the city council. We would love to do this, no additional funds. And the irony in all of this is that when we sit down and we do the district budget consultations, the agents say, oh no, everything's super. We got what we need, we can do everything. But then you come to meetings like this and you tell us, well, there's additional infrastructure. They didn't necessarily give us more money for that. So, we're making everything beautiful, but we don't have the resources. And then you get the finger pointing on the Leventhal agreement for, this is landscape, this is not landscape. So you got the Parks Department, Department of DOT, or Department of Transportation, and DSNY, each pointing fingers at each other, saying, oh, it's not our responsibility, it's their responsibility. But the reason they do that is because, money's fungible. It's all the city budget. It really doesn't matter. Somebody should be capturing that, but nobody's having that discussion. And that's the thing that I find incredibly ironic, in that we've been discussing this. I've been a city employee since 2002, and I've had to come to Borough Service Cabinet meetings for a very long time. And I recall Father Gorman, when he used to chair these meetings a million years ago, sit there and discuss illegal dumping on Webster Avenue. Here I am 17 years later, and we're still talking about illegal dumping along Webster Avenue. And the fact that we can't solve that problem is ridiculous. It really is, because I know how to solve that problem. A lot of people in the community know how to solve that problem. But when it comes to translation and dollars and cents, it never happens. So my question, when I was in the city council, we never had a discretionary budget for DSNY. I understand now that the city council has a discretionary budget for DSNY. How much is that per council member?
So right now, and again, we don't know what's happening in the upcoming budget. Right now, it's each council member gets a bit over $200,000 each for what they call the New York Cleanup Initiative.
So
yes.
Theoretically speaking, each council member in the past year's budget got $200,000, and this is for all 51 council members.
Yeah, each 51, right, and they can use it for any range of cleaning enhancement services, from hiring nonprofits like ACE, Wildcat, providing extra litter basket collection service, providing an extra MLP to help with cleaning up dump out locations, and various council members have in fact done that. So
You said cans. You consider cans expense and not capital?
actually, OMB considers litter baskets expense and not capital.
Okay.
George, I'm going to interrupt you for a second.
Sure.
I just want to focus a little bit of the discussion, if I can, because we do have representatives here from the city council, and I think that it would be unfair to not allow them to make a comment if they have that. But then also in your talk, you mentioned that you know how to fix it. So I'd also like to give you the platform to enunciate
I'm getting
those
there.
differences, what those actual solutions are. So two things that I'd like to do is I'll allow for you to both give your solution and then make time for the representatives here to address them, if they have some words.
Well, I don't want the council to get this twisted either. I'm not blaming your council members. I'm just saying we've been dealing with this since, I've been doing this since 2002. It is 2019. The fact that we haven't dealt with that, we can't solve that.
We've all been dealing with it, George. So I think we're all in the same sort of frustration. So I just want to make sure that it's balanced and that they can have some. Maybe they want to make the same issue that you're making, but we can't say that it's no one's fault. I'm using air quotes.
Well, I have two more points, and it'll come to the solution. Okay. So again, the reason I asked why each council member got that discretionary funding, which was never there previously, I don't know when it was implemented, but one of the solutions might be that they give that money because, for example, in Community Board 12, we do have the DOE fund that cleans up White Plains Road. And prior to that, I know Councilmember King gave money to the Department of Sanitation itself to clean up the areas around the Gun Hill Road train station.
But the Doe Fund originally was not through the city council funding, as you were
You're
told.
absolutely right. Prior to that, it was done through the
state-
Speaker's office.
Well, he
So,
wasn't the speaker then, but yes.
yeah, you're absolutely right. So again, I don't know, I'm not saying to take away the money from the city council, but I'm just offering that one of the solutions is you guys are already aware of the problem. You know how to deal with the problem. I've always been curious, and that's going to be one of the questions that we have for district budget consultations this year, is how much money is being spent on dedicated services like FedCap and the Doe Fund to clean up districts that are really the responsibility of homeowners and commercial tenants. So that's one solution. My other point is, one of the biggest problems that we have in the district that we get complaints from as district managers is other city agencies that don't know how to dispose of their garbage. We get a lot of complaints about the Department of Education and the way they get rid of their trash. And I also get a lot of complaints about the Parks Department, and I also get a lot of complaints about DCAS-owned buildings. My building alone, just one of your enforcement agents walked into my building and said, "Oh, I'm looking for an employee. We have the DA's office." They were going to give her a summons because they found a box in the trash bin right outside our office with her name on it. And I said, I cursed. I said, "That's effing ridiculous. What are you talking about?" I said, "We're not, as employees, responsible for the removal of trash. This is a DCAS-owned building, and I often find that D-class custodians don't dispose of trash properly. I mean, we have a DCAS building on our corner, and right next to us we have an EMS firehouse. They have been summoned. I can't tell you how many times my custodian has been summoned for dumping trash right next to the litter basket, and in your brochure you say that you're not supposed to do that. I don't know if, there's a disconnect between, do you train these people, or if that's DCAS's responsibility? Because, again, I think it could be a lot smoother if there was some sort of cooperation or dealing with this. Again, we shouldn't be reinventing the wheel here. My final point will be, actually, I spoke about it already. I'll skip that. I don't want to beat a dead horse here. I just think, and this is for the city council and for the borough president's office and for all of us as district managers, we have to be forceful about our requests. I take our process during district budget consultations very seriously, which is why I host it in my building. Because I take it seriously, we sit down, we come up with salient questions that should be answered properly. And for the last 3 years, I've not gotten, this goes not just for the Department of Sanitation, but for every agency. We get responses that really don't make any sense. And some of us have better relationships with our elected officials than others. As a community board, we've been very fortunate because, again, I have relationships with people like my district superintendent, so I can take care of certain things, but it shouldn't necessarily be like that. Because we get complaints from local people who live in our community. I got a complaint the other day, and that's my final point will be, in addition to city agencies, you have agencies, Jackie just walked in, like the MTA, that are not upholding their end of the bargain in terms of cleaning properties. And I don't know if we need to revisit the Leventhal agreement to capture all of these things and have more money that are dedicated to the Department of Sanitation, because the top complaints that I get are sanitation related. And they're not about snow removal. They're about litter on streets. And it's very frustrating when I have to explain to somebody, oh, that's not that responsibility, that's this person's responsibility, or that's agency's responsibility. I think we really need to revisit what DSNY can do and what they should be doing. And whether that means that we give them more money so that they can go out and have people on the streets cleaning the streets themselves instead of the Doe Fund or FedCap or anybody else, then that's something that we should revisit and that the city council should consider when it comes time to budget consultations. Because again, we're farming this out to other people, and that should not be the case.
So just real quick, our Bureau of Recycling and Sustainability does work very closely And recently, the Department of Education did put their own office together on sustainability to continually train staff on how they should be properly putting out and managing their waste. It continues to be a challenge. It seems to be getting better, but we're not quite where I think we'd all like to be, but there have clearly been improvements in how many schools have been managing their waste compared to the past. Doesn't mean we don't have more work to do, but we do in recycling office does do a rather intensive and continuous round of education with DCAS superintendents, Department of Education superintendents, and as you may have read and heard, we've been doing some major efforts with NYCHA. They all have infrastructure challenges because they're old buildings and old facilities and things like that, so there's a lot of hurdles to overcome, but we seem to be making progress to some degree in each of those areas. So that's a good thing. The other good thing is we did get a reasonable amount of increases over the last few years to address cleaning issues. Don't know where that's going with the current budget. So that's something we're all concerned about. It's something that the council and the administration have to deal with because the budget is much tighter this coming year than it's been in the past. The other good thing, and we don't know its effect yet because it just really recently went into effect, is that there was a substantial increase in terms of fines for illegal dumping. So that, as it goes into effect and the people who are doing it feel the impact, may help reduce things further. We're all going to have to see how that works.
Okay, thank you for that. So back to the deputies concerned. Does any of the city council reps have anything to say about this? Yes? No?
Just want to, good morning, everyone. Shannon Knotts from Councilman Salamanca's office. I just want to clarify that the council member is very much concerned about illegal dumping. This is a big issue in Hunts Point area. And he is trying to rectify that situation as best as possible. Funding is something that is very tight. As you know, city funds do go to a lot of different agencies, and there's a lot of different things that we have to clean up. But I don't want you to think that your request is falling on deaf ears. He has met with sanitation. He has requested that more staff goes out to certain areas to enforce that illegal dumping is rectified. So, I mean, I just want to kind of clarify that. I understand your point. I understand it is a major concern for a lot of different areas in New York, but we all have to work together. And sometimes we're not always going to be able to solve every situation as quickly as you would think, but as time progresses, stuff will happen.
Before you take the mic, Ms. Hall, I also want to say that I agree that the Leventhal agreement has to be revisited, so that's something that we can talk about moving forward. Because if there are changes in infrastructure, I mean, the only thing that comes to mind real quickly is step streets. And that's always been a challenge for sanitation because they have to have manual brooms to go and clean up the step streets. And that covers a lot of different, it's not just even sanitation or DOT, it's also property owners. So there's a lot of intricacies with that Leventhal agreement that may have to be revisited, and we look forward to any conversation regarding that. Mr. Hall?
Okay, briefly, something you spoke about earlier. You mentioned the sodium chloride. Is that did you identify that as a pre-treatment, or is that something?
That's pre-treatment. That's with the brine truck.
How does that work? You put the sodium.
Just spray down. If you ever drove in Westchester, you see it if you, like before storm. Westchester County does it. On the highways, you'll see the lines, like wet lines on like a highway. That's brine that they put down, and that's there for it lasts up to 24 hours before storm, so we have some time to get it down. And that's what we're going to concentrate on the areas like bus routes.
And that helps the snow to melt faster, more efficiently after it falls?
Well, when the snow comes down, it stops it from forming ice.
Okay, all right. And my second question is,
if you're... That's another layer of protection. We're still gonna salt, we're gonna do all that.
So the sodium and the salt
That's
is...
that's just an initial.
All right, I heard you and I was trying to understand exactly how that works. So, the second question I have, if you're a homeowner and you live close to a main thoroughfare and some of the folks that are coming from the main thoroughfare dump garbage in front of your house and your enforcement officer comes and gives that ticket to that homeowner, how does that work? I mean, does he knock on the door? Does he just write the ticket, or is it, I mean, because that happens a lot.
If we catch somebody like that, we have to catch them in the act, and we'll issue that individual a summons, a personal summons. Everybody that could issue a summons in the sanitation department is supposed to make an attempt. They're supposed to ring a doorbell, knock on the door before they go ahead and issue the summons. If nobody knocks on the door or answers the doorbell, they could, what we call nail mail, they could post that summons. If you have constituents that are in that situation, they're obligated to go to oath. You could do it online, you could do it over the phone, you could do it in the mail to fight that summons.
But ultimately what happens, they receive the summons. If they happen not to be home and somebody dumps that garbage in front of them, that's what happens pretty much.
Yes, 10-4. If it's not your collection day or prior to your collection day, if it's before 4 o'clock on the day before your collection day, we could issue a failure to store. They could issue a sidewalk obstruction. So these are the summonses that we could issue for a bag placed out at the curb in front of somebody's house.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Hello all. I don't know if this works. I speak pretty loud anyways. Hello everyone. So my name is Felix Garcia from Councilmember Gibson's office. Two things. I have one question for you guys before that. To your point, I feel that if you say it's been going on for 17 years and it's not working, thinking about addressing it a different way might help. Yes, we keep throwing money at the situation, but if that money is invested into different alternatives that the community board itself could help bring up. I'm actually in your community board, by the way. I live in there. Just in terms of thinking of different solutions, in terms of even maybe programming for younger populations, in terms of teaching how to properly dispose of garbage instead of trying to just put more bodies on the street, thinking of prevention instead of tackling it afterwards, after the fact. That's just a quick little suggestion. But my question, in terms of the pet stuff that we mentioned, the pet waste, I've seen in certain areas that they have like poles that have like bag dispensers of some sort. Is that a viable thing to put around more places? Because I know I've noticed that there's been some type of like device that has bags.
Yeah, it's not something that we do, but I think that in some cases, parks and some homeowners associations may have done that. Okay. But yeah, we're not putting out things like that on the if you walk your pet, you're responsible for cleaning up after the pet. You can bring it home, put it with your garbage, put it in your toilet, put it in one of our litter baskets. There are alternatives, but you shouldn't leave it on the street.
I just want to circle back to snow removal. Truthfully, yes, the November incident was an anomaly. Why, I'm not really sure. It was an anomaly because I watched cars stuck outside my window for hours. I had personal friends and family members who were stuck on Gun Hill Road for 4 and 5 hours because traffic did not move. So I'm not quite sure how that happened. The other part is on Mashula Parkway South, there's a park. It's right off as you come off the number 4 train. 3 agencies are responsible for, I guess, their portion of snow removal. And everybody tends to point at the other guy about why the snow doesn't get removed or why it doesn't get cleaned up. We've had to resort to going to our council person, Cohen, to kind of reach out to whomever to say, can you just please clean that area? It has gotten a little better, but there are times when it does not get removed properly. And you literally have to ice skate through the street watching for traffic so that you don't get run over because it has not been cleaned up. So how can we alleviate that problem once and for all?
Okay, so where exactly is it?
I'm talking right across the street from Tracy Towers. So you have an exact location where the park is, where the bus route is. Remember, we have, it's a major bus route over there too. We have 3 buses that go past there. You come off the 4 train, they will clean up to the fence line, which I guess they consider to be their property. Then somebody else is responsible, either Parks or DOT. They kind of, look at the other guy and say, well, no, I think this one should be cleaning it. And then somebody else, Sanitation or somebody else, is supposed to clean another portion. So because you have 3 almost different agencies responsible for removing it, everybody points at the other guy, and sometimes it doesn't get done.
Right. And this is a sidewalk.
That's the sidewalk and the street, because they not only, even in sometimes when the corner where the bus has to turn, because the 1 and 2 and the 28 comes past that corner, you have a bank where you can't even get over to the bus, so you gotta try to hop over a snowbank to get up onto the bus. So somebody's not doing their particular job. And this happens for years now.
Okay. So obviously, when a storm hits, we're concerned about clearing the streets, and then we go into the sidewalks once the streets are addressed. Then we go into the sidewalks where crosswalks and corner caps, we use laborers, sometimes the district personnel for that. This specific area, I will bring it up to the district super, I'll get more feedback on that. And whatever is within our domain, we'll handle that, but we'll make sure that the other agencies are doing their job too as well.
I have, on staffing, we had an enforcement action, and I spoke to, you guys don't have a midnight shift for sanitation police?
We do. It works 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning.
To when?
6 a.m., 10 p.m. to 6 a.m.
Oh, 10 to 6 in the morning.
Right,
All
10
right.
p.m. to 6 a.m. in the morning.
How about
Our morning
enforcement?
shift starts at 6 a.m.
Enforcement, how about sanitation?
Sanitation enforcement works 6 to 2, 9 to 5, and we have not an overnight shift, but a 1 to 9 or a 2 to 10, depending on the time of the year. And that's our K9/action summons members.
And it's adequate staffing to catch dumping?
Agents don't do illegal dumping, sanitation police do, and we use our resources as needed. I move them around based on the type of complaint and where the complaint is at.
So, again, 2 concerns on that. I don't know why we're not capturing people dumping along Webster Avenue, and it occurs to me that it happens at night because NYPD has told me this is what, and that they've had to collar people. Secondly, I witnessed somebody dumping trash. The store across the street was dumping trash into a waste litter basket. I took pictures of it. I made a complaint to 311. They came out. They said, "Oh, are you willing to fill out an affidavit to," I guess, and I was. I don't know, I guess I don't know what the solution is there in terms of legislation, but it is very difficult to say, "Oh, I took a picture of a car dumping illegally," because then the next step is, "Oh, well, you have to fill out a sworn affidavit in order for us to write a summons." And that discourages a lot of people. Again, I don't care one way or the other, but a lot of people, "Oh, it's my neighbor that's doing this. Oh, well, you have to testify to it." Oh, I'm not gonna do that. So again, I don't know if that's a legislative thing or if that's something that could be done internally, policy-wise, that you can say, well, if someone makes a complaint and says it's the neighbor, maybe we can put a car on it or observe it for a week or something. Again, that's just a suggestion, because I disagree with the first offense being $4,000. I don't know, have you increased the number of summonses that you wrote in the previous years?
To the Bronx alone? Yes.
Not for the Bronx, but for particular areas. I mean, have you captured more illegal dumpers, and has that discouraged them as a result of all this?
You gotta remember that not everybody does it more than once, and they gotta be found guilty by oath. So we catch them, we impound their vehicle, they can expedite the case and go to oath, or they can wait 30 days to the hearing date. When they go before a judge and the judge finds them not guilty, what happens? There's no fine collected. It doesn't discourage them from doing it. They might even go out and do it more. But that's our challenge when
And this will be another thing that maybe you guys can talk about. I'm a homeowner. I live in I'm not a homeowner. I live in Co-op City. We own a co-op. There's sometimes, I mean, we have the luxury of living in a co-op where we can just put stuff in the basement, or we can just put it in our hallway and the porters take it. My parents, for example, are homeowners. If they have trash that can't be, like, I know you said you guys are doing your safe event, you're doing other types of events, which are not necessarily helpful, especially for elderly, like my parents. They're not gonna haul their, 65-inch down to wherever it is that you gotta do it. Why don't you allow for that stuff to be disposed of? And just like you do recycling, you can have dedicated vehicles for that so that a homeowner can just legally dump stuff, or for commercial entities to legally get rid of it. I'm trying to get at the root of why people are illegally dumping stuff.
Okay, so a couple of things. The affidavit is for when somebody sees dumping from a vehicle, because technically illegal dumping has to be from a vehicle, not somebody walking across the street with a bag. Okay, we can look in the bag, and if we find identifying information, we can write a violation for improper disposal to the person whose information is in the bag. Okay, illegal dumping, we can either see it and deal with it, or if somebody gives us an affidavit, we can deal with it based on the affidavit. Because it has to be attested to by somebody that it happened. That's a legal thing. It's not something that we can control by policy or regulation. With regard to your other question was regarding...
Well, just the root of why people are dumping. Why are we...
Right. So
why couldn't a
we do work with elected officials and groups to do pop-up events around the year that for e-waste and other things, and even smaller safe events. So we've done smaller events throughout the year with various groups and elected officials. We have a pilot program that started in Staten Island and is now in Brooklyn and part of Queens, where we collect e-waste. We can't collect e-waste, nor can any other municipality in New York City in the same trucks that we collect other waste, because state law that went into effect prohibits it, which means we have to, and there was supposed to be a give-back program. The city had its own legislation, which was much more extensive than the state's, which would have provided more opportunities, but the state preempted that. So we're left with that, and collecting it is expensive, and you have to contract with the proper vendors to dispose of it once you collect it, but you also have to assemble it in the proper place once you collect it. So it is an additional expense, it is additional trucks, it is additional personnel to collect e-waste. We're hoping to expand it. Again, that all depends upon the budget.
Thank you.
I just, two minor things. Let's just use the illegal dumping, right? Should we go to our supers? Like, if it's an issue, we thinking it's an enforcement issue or a sanitation police issue, right? Should we bypass the super, or should we go to, for everything, the super should be the first line of defense, then the super can determine what route to go?
I would like you to go to the super. I'm sure you would like to just go to the
I just
super.
want to make sure.
Yeah, I would go to the district super, have that report with him, and then filter it to us, and then we go.
They communicate regularly with enforcement.
They're hands-on.
And can you just give us an update on the organics recycling? I know there was a big push. I don't know what happened.
We have to see what's in the budget to tell us what happened. The theory is, as I understand it, and we'll have to see how it plays out budget and operational wise, is that the intent is to begin phase out to mandatory beginning in the lower density districts and then moving up throughout the city. It was always intended that in the high-rise districts, it would be a different program than what we would do curb door to door in the lower rise areas with buildings signing up and different routes to collect from the larger buildings. So, we'll have to see how it plays out, but that's another discussion that's going to involve the administration and the council in terms of how we move forward with organics.
So, one second. Before I have you speak. So this is what I would like to suggest to the community boards and even the city council members. If you have problem areas, just let's create a list so that at least we know which ones to target and which ones to monitor. If you don't mind sending it to me, I'll put it together and make sure that sanitation gets it so that we can find a way to focus on those problem areas throughout the borough.
I just want to circle back to the Leventhal. What collectively can we do as the first step to get organized to actually revisit it? Because it's citywide. Certainly it involves so many agencies, parks, DOT, DSNY. It needs to be relooked at. I think funds need to be allocated according to what agency is now going to be expected to do this, or, things need to be clarified. But in this room, what would be the first step? Would it begin with the council, the borough presidents getting together, the mayor? What can we do to push this forward? Because it's come up several times about the inadequacies or the lack of clarity or the lack of funding for what's in it for the Leventhal.
So, if I may suggest, we'll convene at a later date to just, go over what the Leventhal agreement says right now, and then just go through what suggestions might come forward with that. But obviously, it would take a meeting outside of the cameras, just so that we can convene. It may take place, hopefully, after one of these meetings, if it's amenable to everybody, but I'll just check back with the deputy to see how we can
That would
move
be
forward.
excellent.
But that would be one of the ways to move forward on it.
Right.
And if, any other questions for sanitation? Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
For coming to this meeting. And hopefully this will, at least guide the questions for the borough budget consultations in September. The next, we still have a meeting, folks. The next item on the agenda is, folks, hello, we still have a meeting, please. The next item on the agenda is an overview of Census 2020. And we have Maria Matos. She's a partner specialist for Census 2020. Thank you very much for your patience.
Good morning. I feel like saying, don't leave, it's important for you too.
Why don't we give you this one and you can...
Hi, everybody. Good. Hello? Can you hear me? Okay, good morning. My name is Maria Matos. I'm a partnership specialist from the U.S. Census Bureau. I know that you all know about the importance of the census, the decennial, the counting of every single person in the United States and their territories every 10 years. I'm going to give like a friendly reminder, serious friendly reminder, about its importance. Since 1790, we have been conducting this census every 10 years. It's important, it's in the Constitution, it's our civic duty. Why is it important? It is important because money, funds. $675 billion are waiting to be properly distributed every year through all the states of the USA and its territories. How do we do that? It's a huge task. It is also important because we use the counting to know how many seats are in a Congress in every state, correct? And it's important, right? I always tell people in churches, community organizations, meetings, mosques, if your elected official doesn't know a proper counting in their district, they don't know how much money to ask, right? So we don't get the money that we deserve in that specific area. Another reason why it's so important, besides the money, the funding, it's about state officials redraw the boundaries of the congressional and state legislative districts in their states to account for population shifts. Right? So, those three reasons are the most important things about answering the Census 2020. I want to also emphasize that it is safe. We take an oath for life. It's called Code Title 13. I take an oath for life that I will never reveal your information. If I make the attempt, I'll go to jail for 5 years and will have to pay $250,000. The information that we collect, the data, is encrypted. It will never get out in any case, right? All right, my name is Maria Eunice Matos. I live in such and such and such in this area in the Bronx. I am whatever years old, yada, 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 bam, bam, bam. The data is disseminated in a way that it's going to say, in 2020, let's say, for example, 20,000 individuals were female, Hispanic, living in the Bronx. That's the way the data is disseminated, for statistical purposes only. Now, you're going to say, all right, Maria, I believe you. Do you think that the residents in the areas of the community boards or the New York City Council districts, individuals who are undocumented, are going to believe me? Do you really think so? No. So that's why I come here to give this presentation and ask you to be our ambassadors. Thank you so much for Community Board 9, 10, 11, and 6. I still have to reach out to 3, 12, and the others are going to be eventually reached by one of our partnership specialists. For giving me the opportunity to give a presentation to the Community Board regular meetings. I need you to be our ambassadors. Thank you so much for the Bronx Borough President's Office staff, Marisol and Tracy, for giving us the opportunity to be in every single event so we can do the outreach. If you connect me with your church, with your priest, with your pastor, with your mosque, with your imam, with your rabbi, I will be able to talk to him or talk to her. They can connect me with the people, because I'm here nicely dressed, very proper, right? But when I do the outreach, I do grassroots. We talk, and it's through a priest that they believe me. I am the only Spanish speaking at the moment partnership specialist working in New York City. So I am assigned to the Bronx, but I also have been going to Queens, Brooklyn, and New Jersey as well. And when I go to communities like Bushwick in Brooklyn, or the Hub, I did a kickoff on April 1st, this past April 1st at the Hub, 149th and 3rd Avenue. People are afraid, so that's why I need you. I'm going to tell you a short story, true story, right? So after the kickoff, I go, well, I have a presentation tomorrow morning and my nails are awful. So let me just go to there's a lot of nail places around there. So let me go to this nail place over there, right? So I sit down, everybody Hispanic, Most of the Hispanic people there are Ecuadorians. They're speaking in their language, dialect, Quechuan, and some of them in Spanish. So I'm gonna call my coordinator and tell her, hey Linda, kickoff was great, we did the outreach, we promoted the job opportunities for 2020, everything is fine, I spoke about this, the federal agency, the person who was doing my nails spoke in Quechuan to another person, and to another person, and all of a sudden, my nails were not finished. They were gone. Nobody was there. And the owner said, oh, we have an emergency, we need to close. True story. 149 on 3rd Avenue on April 1st, 2019. Right? So we have a huge task to follow. Once again, we need you to be our voices, our trusted voices. I need you to connect with the people in your areas. So it's important, it's safe. Again, code title 13, your information is encrypted. Moving forward, how many of you on Black Friday order things online? Be honest, right? Guys, special tires, 4 tires for your car for such and such, Victoria's Secret, right? Yes or no? Don't lie, right? They ask you for your credit card number and the 3 digits in the back of your card. Yes or no? How many of us, at the end of a hard day, we ordered pizza, Domino's pizza? And you tell a stranger over the phone your credit card number and the 3 digits. Sometimes they ask online your social security number. Do you put it? Sometimes? It's the credibility, et cetera, et cetera. We do. We don't ask for that. For the first time in 2020, the census will be able to be answered online. I'm sorry that I didn't click. I've been doing this for so long. Sorry about that. Oh, hold on. There you go. So for the first time, the census will be able to be answered online, right? You go to your phone, go in the website that we will tell you in 2020, and you answer the questions. You will also be able to make a phone call and answer the questions on the phone. 12 languages. Every language will have a phone number. If you choose to, let's say that your language is not there, you'll be able to print from the website in 59 languages, right? So let's say that okay, you don't want to answer online, you don't want to make that phone call, you receive the questionnaire, fill it out, and mail it back. At the beginning of 2020, people will go around the neighborhoods updating the addresses, address canvassing, and also the maps. After that, April 1st, 2020, Census Day, I know that we all are going to answer the census, but if we don't, after that, someone will be knocking on your door, will be saying, hey, my name is such and such, proper ID, I work for the U.S. Census Bureau, and I would like 5 minutes of your time to answer these questions. So let's convey the message of telling those people that we know, we all have a friend, a neighbor, somebody that works somewhere. I don't know how, but they do work. They have the right to work, and they work, even though they're undocumented. And tell them, if you feel afraid and you don't want anybody knocking on your door, just answer the questionnaire. And they go, oh, I'm not going to answer online. A lot of people have Facebook. They put everything in Facebook, where they are, where they go, where they eat, pictures, etc. So this is very important information that you can spread around the Borough of the Bronx. Again, important, safe, easy to do. Now, I know that the sentiments in this, times are very hard, and everybody's going bananas about the question, the question. You know what I'm talking about? There you go. All right. So, just as an informative, the question was added to enforce the act of voting rights. However, we encourage everyone to answer the questionnaire completed, but we will not void a questionnaire that is not. With that said, do you have any questions? Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Bill Hall from Board 12. Just a couple of questions. The census takers are employees. Are they federal employees, even they're part-time?
Yes, sir.
Are they held to the same standard in terms of?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, my other question is, all right, census takers take information. Now, the U.S. Department of Commerce is who you work for, correct?
The Department of Commerce is the big umbrella we're
Right.
under.
Now, where do they get their funding from? From the federal government, yes?
Yes.
So now, if one agency of the federal government wants information from another agency of the federal government, are you saying the U.S. Department of Commerce will deny that information?
The U.S. Census Bureau will never reveal your information. It will be only, the data will be revealed for statistical purposes only. And we've been 4 times in court through the years, through the history, and we never reveal any information. It's against the law. We do not reveal information even to agencies to enforce the law, like ICE, Immigration Department, FBI, or CIA.
Okay. Now, my other question is there an assessment process? I mean, if you're a census taker, assess 8 people in a particular family unit, but he can see that there's 16, is there any authority he can use to, or he or she can use to make that adjustment, or?
In their folders, and I apologize for, everybody has information. Some of you guys have folders. I apologize for those who doesn't a folder. There are the questions all there that the census takers are gonna ask everybody. Now, I was gonna go through that. I'm gonna answer your question, but let me just go real quick about the jobs, and I'll get there. We can all apply for the temporary jobs positions. 2020 census.gov/jobs is in your folder. And we have numerous positions. We have the usajobs.gov Area Census Manager, Administrative Manager, Information Technology Manager, Census Field Manager, Lead Census Field Manager, Recruiting Manager, Partnership Specialist, right? But for the 2020 operations, and once again, the website is 2020census.gov/jobs. We have Office Operations Supervisor, Recruiting Assistant, Clerks, the person who does my timesheet or other clerks, enumerators, census takers. These positions are full-time or part-time. They're between $20 to $27.50 per hour. You're gonna get paid weekly. It's great after the census is done that you're gonna have that in your resume. Why is that? Because we take your information very seriously. So once you apply, you put all your information, right? You do an assessment, a series of questions that, those questions are gonna tell us, okay, you're gonna go to be a clerk, or a manager, supervisor, etc. After that, when you're selected, right, based on that, we're gonna call you and we're gonna say, hey, do you still want that job? Because perhaps by that time you have another job. Do you still want that job? Do you still want to get paid such and such? And you say, yes, I'm in, right? So that's when we tell you, you need to come to take your fingerprints and we need to do a background check, right? So let's say that you get hired as a census taker and you knock on the door. I'm gonna ask you a series of questions, and whatever you answer me, it's what I'm going to put. That is, if you forgot to answer online, on the phone, or you did not fill out the questionnaire and mail it back. And in 2010, people were saying, so how are you gonna answer about your race, about your ethnicity? It's how you feel. I'm Puerto Rican. Part of my family came from Spain. Other family members were slaves. And from my mother's side, we are Taínos. I answered the way I felt.
Ms.
So the
Matos-
same, yes.
I'm sorry, Ms. Matos. I'm just trying to get to the question that he had.
Yes.
Does the census taker, you just said that the census taker would only put down the information that the person that they
Yes.
spoke to provided.
That's it.
So if that person said 8 people,
Yes.
as opposed to observing the 16, 8 is the answer.
Yes.
So there's no assessment process that, at that level, that the census taker has? In other words, whatever information they give you, that's what has to be filed in the data?
Yeah, they're gonna have a data that is updated about the building, right? And they're gonna see, how many mailboxes.
So I guess my question
So-
is, do you guys have some sort of overall assessment of the information you receive to secure it, to make sure that information is accurate?
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Is there any way, just to clarify, is there any way to take into account the 8 additional people that are in that apartment as far as the census numbers go?
Well, once I go to that house as a census taker and I ask the person, how many people live here with you today? The person is gonna say, okay, 10 people. My 3 daughters, my mom, my husband, da-da-da. That's what I put.
But if there's 20 people, that's what he's asking. So
Well,
who takes in,
I-
so we're trying to capture as many numbers,
I understand, but
but you're not legally allowed to
I cannot force you to,
disclose any.
So you don't have
Disclose.
investigative status, you're collecting
Right.
data, that's it?
That's it.
that's it.
Okay, all right.
Do I have time? 2 minutes?
Jeremy has a question, so.
Yes.
Let's see if it has to do with the same.
Hi, John, thank you.
Hi. So 3 things. You mentioned that the census is online now. You have to be contacted by the census. You can't just go online and do it yourself, right?
No, it's going to be a specific link. It's going to come in 2020 where you can go there and answer.
Okay. So that link, though, is that sent to you, or is that just accessible to anyone? That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, it will be accessible for everybody to be
really?
able to answer.
Okay. And then how does the ACS fit into the census? Because isn't the ACS an arm of the census, the American?
ACS is one of our surveys. The Census Bureau has about more than 130 surveys.
Okay.
The decennial is not a survey. It's a counting of the people.
Say again?
The decennial is a counting of the people, not a survey. But the
Okay.
U.S. Census Bureau, after the census is over, we still work in 130 surveys.
Okay. And then the last question I had is, so I know the 1880 through 1940 censuses are, so the census is made public after a certain time period.
Since
Am I-
1790, yes.
What's that?
Every
10 years.
Every 10 years it's
Every
made
10
public?
Every 10 years, we conduct the census.
Yeah, I understand that. What I'm saying is, it's made public at some point, because you can go back to 1940 and find out where everybody lived.
You are correct. By Title 44, it allows the administration of the National Archives to release the census records after 72 years.
Okay. Okay, great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay. Good.
How do you take into account if someone is duplicating, like you're counting more than once?
We're not going to be counting a person twice. Our mission is to count everyone once, only once, and in the right place.
So you're only counting them by their household, correct?
Yes.
What about people that are in the shelter? What about people that are incarcerated? What about people
Great.
that don't have a household?
Right. At the moment, we're targeting all the shelters. Actually, I have a presentation in one shelter. We're getting in contact with the director of that shelter, specifically the one that I'm going to go next week. And Brooklyn has a lot of shelters, Bronx too. So we're going to be counting people in those shelters there. And also, we're going to be going to all the train stations. All the people that are at the platforms and the train stations, they will also be counted. Now, people who are incarcerated, they're going to be counted where they are on April 1st of 2020. Now, this is an update, extra information that I'm going to, because it's important. All right. For the 2020 census, we will continue counting prisoners who are incarcerated on Census Day, April 1st of 2020, at the correctional facility. However, we plan to provide states with tools to help them move inmates back to where they lived before incarceration, if they choose to do so. These tools will help states make their own decisions about where and whether to include prisoners when redrawing district boundaries. This plan gives interested states the information they need to redraw district boundaries as they prefer, while still following the census principle of counting people where they live and sleep most of the time. We'll also give states the count of their prison populations earlier than before. After the 2020 census, we will provide prison counts along with the other data needed for redistricting by March 31st, 2021. Counts were released April 20, 2011. Any other questions?
Anyone else? Is there anything else you wanted to add to your presentation?
That's it. Oh, yes, ma'am.
So just to clarify, prisoners will be counted at the prison where they reside now.
Yes, ma'am.
So where they originally lived, they don't get counted at any point in time?
They don't get counted where they lived before. They get counted in prison. If they are on April 1st of 2020 in prison, they will be counted there. But we will allow to provide those numbers to the states to, if they choose to use those numbers for redistricting and redrawing the lines.
So you're talking about where they originated. They'll use the numbers of origination
yes, ma'am.
for districting,
Yes.
but not for funding.
It's also under reviewing.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Ms. Hill?
It does, but the problem with that is you have a lot of people of color locked up in prisons, so that would undercount where they originally came from. So that's
Yes.
not going to be reflected. And then because these prisons are generally located in
Upstate.
outlying areas, then that community will get the benefit of that
Yes.
count.
Absolutely, yes.
Not the place where they originally came from. So,
That concern was in 2010, so that is the reason they are trying to work it out, so that states and elected officials, et cetera, can work it out at the moment for funding or withdrawing the limits, so it could be taken in consideration.
Shana?
In terms of I just want to double back on what you said about going to train stations and counting individuals. Are you referring to the homeless population that sleeps on trains, or?
Yes.
Okay, what about the ones that are literally on the street, like in encampments, sleeping under bridges and stuff? How do you count those?
Everybody will be counted. That's why, that's one of my jobs. I have to connect with everybody. It's a huge task. So if you do have, because I know I worked for an elected official before, and we do meet people every day, constituents every day. So if you happen to know, people who are here, there, even people, I remember in 2010, contacting people from the circus that came to Brooklyn because they needed to be counted as well. Even though they were on the road, they live in this nation and then count too. Any other questions? Yes.
Just wanted to, might be kind of a silly question, but a woman that's pregnant 9 months, is she counted as one? Or if she's expecting, do you consider that in terms of the census?
A newborn baby that is alive and breathing, April 1st, 2020, she will be counted.
She has to give birth on April 1st, 2020. Is there anything else? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for giving this opportunity to us.
We'll share
Have
the
a great day.
presentation with everyone because they did send it to us electronically, so you'll have that information with you. But I just wanted to share with you that we will be having, and I'll have Tracy talk more about it, we will be having an official 2020 Census Kickoff on May 1st. And we're asking everyone to be there. It's at 10:45 in the rotunda at 851 Grand Concourse.
Good morning, everyone. You should have received an invite to this. The borough president is very concerned and wants to make sure that every corner of our borough is counted. And why are we starting now? It's about education. And I thank you very much, Maria, for coming out today. Right now, we have to educate. I know people are saying it's 2020. We're in 2019. Why are we doing this? So we need to educate. There are job opportunities as well. The Bronx is the 4th hardest county in the state to count, and we need to improve our numbers for this upcoming. We have so many issues, as we hear every month in here, about budget issues and things like that, so we need to make sure we have the funding, we have the representation. We're asking you to not only attend, but bring organizations that are in your district. Invite them to come. We're going to be forming the complete count committee for the Bronx that day. We're going to be asking organizations to join on and become partners. We're going to have leaders from this. There's so many organizing efforts. We have labor organizing right now around this. We have the city. Julie Menon was just appointed as the census czar for the city. She's coming. The state is also doing organizing. We want to get everybody in the same room, and we want to make sure everyone knows what's going on and how we can partner moving forward in getting the word out and making sure that the Bronx has a complete count. So thank you very much, and we really appreciate your help on this. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So I just have some other announcements and some other events. We have on Thursday, April 25th at 6:30 to 8:30, we're going to have a faith-based land development meeting with the Office of the Attorney General, Letitia James. It's going to discuss their AG's role in sales and other property transactions by religious corporations, questions to ask before and during the transaction for your organization, tips, and how to handle foreclosures and tax liens. We also have a...
I'm sorry, is that going to be at this location?
That's going to be in the rotunda. And then on May 3rd, we're going to have Learning How to Prevent Legionnaires, a public health education event. Learn how to protect yourself and your loved ones from this disease. That'll be on May 3rd. at 12 noon for a light lunch, and the program will begin at 12:30. And that too is in the Rotunda, 851 Grand Concourse, Veterans Memorial Hall. We also have the Department of Consumer and Worker Protection, formerly known as Consumer Affairs. They'll be coming and hosting an event called The Promise and Peril of Credit as a Financial Health Tool. That will be held on May 22nd. And that too will be at, I want to say the Rotunda, 851 Grand Concourse. But I'll confirm that, and I'll send all of this information to you. We also have Bronx Week coming up, people, May 9th through the 19th, so please look out for those calendars. The press conference is going to be on May 6th. And then we have the Break the Fast Together at the Bronx Annual Ramadan Iftar Dinner on May 23rd, again in the Rotunda at 6:30. I hope you can make it. If there are any other announcements that you guys might have?
Yes, Community Board A is doing a women's suffrage special event at Wave Hill on May 19th with the Bronx Historical Society. They started their walk in Kingsbridge to Albany. There'll be a senior youth intergenerational event at Riverdale Neighborhood House on June 2nd. There'll be a housing town hall at St. Stephen's Church in Marble Hill, and there'll be a bike safety event at Van Cortlandt Park on June 23rd.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Councilmember Salamanca's office will be holding a mammogram event. It will be May 8th at our district office from 9 to 5 by appointment only. This is for females ranging from the age of 40 to 79 years of age. It'll be open to both insured and uninsured constituents. So I will leave a flyer here for anyone who's interested, and they can call our office to get an appointment. Again, it's open 9 to 5 at our district office, May 8th.
Anyone else? That concludes our meeting. I appreciate everybody's time and questions and concerns shared. Thank you.